children should not come first. I love my daughter and I love my grandkids, but for any of that to work, this has to work first. And so this really, God, then this, and then everything else falls into place. And so I'm going to be able to love and take care of my children better if this is working than if it's not.
Hello and welcome to the Sitting in a Tree podcast, where we're helping you build a fun and fulfilling marriage, sharing our stories, and giving out advice to move your marriage forward. Now, here's today's show. Here we go.
Hey guys, I'm John.
And I'm Shallon.
And this is Sitting in a Tree podcast. We want to take a few minutes just to let you guys know what's happening, what you can expect when we drop our first episode on January 7th, and the kind of topics that we'll be covering over this podcast. And so first off, thought we'd let you in a little bit on who we are. So Shallon?
So obviously I'm Shallon. I am a licensed marital and family therapist. We have been married for almost 30 years. Well, 30 years plus, I guess technically. As a licensed marital and family therapist, I've gotten to work with couples for a long time, obviously, and really got to see some of the things they go through, along with being able to relate to some of those things that we've experienced over the years. Mm-hmm. And when I started in school to be a licensed marital and family therapist, my goal initially had been to work with couples. My heart was really to work with ministers and their spouses, and recognized initially that wasn't going to work for a couple different reasons. First of all, stereotypically, ministers and spouses don't want to talk about having problems in their relationship, and especially not to another minister or their spouse. Mm-hmm. And then the other side of that was that we were really young, and I was really young, so they definitely weren't going to talk to me. Right. And then there wasn't a lot of opportunity to do that as a new therapist. Mm-hmm. And so I did instead worked for 11 years with therapeutic foster care kids and their families, mm-hmm. Which was a unique experience that I actually loved very much. Typical burnout is 6 months in that field. I lasted 11 years. Right. That was both good and bad. Mm-hmm. I think that I learned a lot, definitely experienced a lot of understanding about trauma and compassion fatigue and those kind of things in both a positive and a negative way. But was also able to see how families work in the best of ways and in the worst of ways, mm-hmm. of course, but really got to see that. I still got to work with couples and children and those kind of things. I didn't understand why that was the path God put me on, but it definitely was part of that process. As time went on, God opened up other doors and I got to move on beyond that. And I'm now working more with couples, but part of that was still this desire to do this. And so.
And after the therapeutic foster care, able to open your own practice and have an agency, and now back into just private practice again. So uniquely qualified to work with couples and speak into their lives. I, on the other hand, coming from with you 30 years of ministry, speaking to couples and premarital counseling and marital counseling and couples counseling and all of that stuff that you do as a pastor, and just working with families over and over. We kind of have an insight into not only what goes on in our relationship, but also what goes on in other people's relationships. And so have been able to maybe develop a kind of an overview of the types of things that everybody struggles with. And then some things that are unique to certain, maybe jobs, people that are in certain jobs, things of that nature. We have kind of unique ends into several of those. And so when we were talking about all of that and the ways that we wanted to help people, and we really wanted to work with couples together, and we've done that through church and classes and conferences and things of that nature, we thought, man, why not do this podcast and be able to reach a larger audience and also be able to speak into more and more lives. And really our goal is to just help people into a marriage relationship that's not just one that they stay together, but one that they really want to stay together, and that they thrive together, and that they have fun in marriage, and that they enjoy being together, and not out of obligation, but out of love. And so that's kind of in a nutshell where we're coming from. Let's talk a little bit about our relationship. We've been married for 30 years. You said that already. And in that time, we've raised a daughter. Now we have grandkids. We were in ministry our entire marriage, which is both good and bad. We had a lot of great people to look up to in relationships. We also had people that we could look at and say, that's not what I want to do with my relationship. But also in that, living in a glass house, for lack of better words, everybody always looking at us and kind of being under the microscope a lot of times puts a lot of pressure on a marriage. And you having to deal with being a pastor's wife and a minister's wife and youth pastor's wife and all of those things that you were, and me being what I was, trying to live up to standards that maybe even we didn't put on each other, but other people put on us. Learning how to navigate all of that over the years was a hard road, and we didn't always do it perfectly. But through the years, I think have learned and have a unique perspective on how all of that operates and how relationships operate, and the communication and all of the things that are required to have a successful marriage.
Mm-hmm. And I think part of that was we got married young, which again, I wouldn't recommend everybody doing that. But we did, and we got to grow up together, and we got to figure out each other in a lot of ways that may have made it more challenging, but it also gave us a benefit in understanding this is who you are, this is who I am, and this is how we work together. And so we learned to grow up and work together in a lot of ways. So 18 and 19 is not the ideal age to necessarily get married and make it work. We're both stubborn. We were both committed. And so we definitely did it and made it work. But I think that ability to figure out, okay, how do I fit with you and your goals and dreams, and how do you fit with me and my goals and dreams, have always been part of what helped us figure it out.
Right. So what are some things that you would like to see us cover? Some things that are maybe on your heart that you think that we are going to be covering with couples and in marriage?
So I think communication is always important, and that is going to cover communication about everything. I mean, finances, how to fight fair and to talk through that and know what you need, processing and talking about, that was a very counselor word there, sorry, but talking about your history and what you grew up in and what your expectations are in your marriage about everything, holidays, meal times, retirement, vacations, everything, sex, love, what love looks like, what apologies look like, how you expect to, for better, for worse. Those kind of things are all part of communication, but then that carries on into all those other expectations and what your expectations are, or what your perceptions of marriage are.
Right. And all of that is just part of staying together, part of building a union. We, from a very young age and from an early time, decided that, we were now one, and it was no longer, you and me, but it was us, and in everything that we did. And the more we grabbed a hold of that concept, I mean, it took years and years to really grasp that, but the more we have grabbed a hold of that, I think the stronger we've become as a couple. And I think that's exactly the way that it's supposed to be. The more that you grab a hold of that concept, that it's no longer a you and a me, it's an us. And that's not always talked about as much, especially in more secular counseling and realms. They talk a lot about, you have to keep your own personality and keep your own this and keep your own that. And I agree, some part you do have to keep some of that, but also you kind of meld into one. You melt into one person who is the best of both of those. And so there are areas in our lives where we are totally opposites. That's almost every area of our lives. If when we take the personality test or we take the quizzes to see if we're supposed to be married or not after 30 years, we still take those quizzes and all of those things. We are always on opposite ends, and personally in our lives, a lot of people would see all of those things and they would say, man, y'all are just so different. You're so opposite. And it was almost a negative to, say, how are you guys going to make this work when you're not? And instead, over the years, what finally clicked in our minds is that, maybe we're opposite for a reason. And the things that you are strong in, I'm weak, maybe I'm weaker in, and the things that I'm stronger in, maybe you're weaker in. And if we're one, then that's really good because we're able to take up for each other's weaknesses and make one really strong person, which is what we're called to do, to be one. And so one of the things that I'd like to see us do in this is really help people become one in their marriage, and every aspect of it. Like you said, there's a lot of topics just dealing with family and different things like that. And, what happens when you bring your work home with you, or your things that happen at work, or what happens when, you find yourself more comfortable at work than you are at home. What do I need to do to change that? What needs to happen? And how do we get on the same page on money or on, whatever it is, just fill in the blank. There are all of these things that can be addressed and that need to be addressed. But I think they all go back to what you said a while ago, is communication. So learning how to communicate with each other effectively, because honestly, the way that I communicate with you is not the same way that you communicate with me. They're very different because we're very different people. And so to say, well, this is what you need to say to your wife, or this is what you need to say to your husband, it's much deeper than that. You have to learn who you are, and then who they are, and then who you are together. And then that determines your communication. And so, it's not like there's just a checklist of things that we can go down and say, we're going to talk about this, 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 and this. I think each thing leads to another thing. And so there's plenty of topics out there to keep this going for a really long time. So I'm excited about where it's going and that we have the opportunity to do this. Any last words that you want to share?
No, I'm excited about it. I think, like you were talking about, really recognizing how our communication impacts the relationship, and like you were talking about opposites, it really was taken on as a negative for me, at least, for a long time in our relationship. And when I realized that I compliment you in my opposite, instead of it being a negative, it changed that. And so really recognizing how you speak to each other, and then even how other people speak to you, and then really how do you take that in yourself, and how does that affect the relationship, is huge. And really building on that. And then how do you look at your spouse? Is there compassion and understanding, and then even at how you look at yourself is huge in that, which again goes back to how you communicate within yourself and with your spouse and those kind of things. And so there's just a lot that we can do with that. And so I'm excited about that, and what's to come with this.
Right. So our first episode on January 7th is going to be First Comes Love. We're just going to go along with John and Shallon Sitting in a Tree, KISSING, First Comes Love. And we're going to talk about what it means what love means in a marriage type relationship. People always say, talk about falling in love. And I have, in the near past, came to this conclusion that you don't really fall in love. I think you fall into a lot of things. You fall into lust, you fall into desire, you fall into all of these different things that you can fall into. But love is something so much bigger than that. You don't fall into love, you step into it. Like, you decide you're going to do it, because that, anyway, the kind of love that lasts anyway. It's not a I love French fries or I love bacon type thing. This type of love is different, and it's something that you have to work at, and you have to keep it going. And it's not I have to work at it thing. It's something that I want to work at, because I want that. I desire that in my life. I need that. And so we're going to talk about all of those aspects of what it really means to have love in a marriage. And so I'm looking forward to that first episode. We're going to do First Come Love, then came marriage, and then the baby carriage. We'll talk about family and what that looks like in a marriage relationship. And hopefully bust a popular myth, is that your children should come first, because I don't agree with that. Children should not come first. I love my daughter and I love my grandkids, but for any of that to work, this has to work first. And so this really, God, then this, and then everything else falls into place. And so I'm going to be able to love and take care of my children better if this is working than if it's not. That brings a whole nother set of challenges. And so we're going to cover all of those things and lots of hot button topics as we go along. One of the other things that we'd like to do is to really speak to your situation. And so if you have something that you would like for us to talk about, you can comment or message or email. And we're going to push this out to YouTube, and we'll be on Spotify and Apple Podcast and some other services. So you'll be able to find the podcast every week, and then we'll use our social media stuff to just kind of have fun and keep people engaged and give you an opportunity to talk and communicate with us. We're looking forward to doing this. First episode drops January 7th, and we want you to download it. Be sure that you share and follow our YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on whatever social medias you have. If you have Facebook, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're even on TikTok. Just come and see us, visit us there, comment, like, share, follow, do all the things that you have to do. It'll help us get the word out and help us grow an audience, and we'd appreciate that.
He's John.
This is Shalyn, and this is Sitting in a Tree Podcast.
Here we go.